Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Herron Talks podcast. And as you can see, today our co-host, Ms. Bonita Love, is actually out with clients. So she is not here today, but she's going to miss a really good conversation, one that she and I have talked about, and I think many people in Dallas, particularly in Oak Cliff, are very excited about the deck park that is taking shape there. Right there, kind of a little entryway into the zoo, and that is just a very exciting situation that is going on there. And I think there's a discussion that should be had about it that goes or extends beyond just the park itself. There's a lot of opportunity that I think will be created by that destination, and that's what it will be, a destination point being created in Oak Cliff. And you know, I grew up in Oak Cliff. I love Oak Cliff. Let me make this point real quick too. In April, I'm not going to bring you into this because I don't want you to have to deal with this in case I say something that I don't want to put on you. So I had to correct a real estate agent not that long ago. I had to help him out because he was going to catch it because he referenced a property that he had in Oak Cliff, clearly in Oak Cliff, in the Glen Oaks neighborhood of Oak Cliff, and he called it. Where did he say it was, Marcella? What did? Because Marcella, you're an Oak Cliff person, and you know what can be said that will cause problems. He said in
South Dallas.
He said it was in South Dallas.
Yeah.
He said it was in South Dallas. So
we have to help people on that a lot.
Oh yeah, and they don't know until they catch it, right? And they're like, man, what? They're like, this is Southern Dallas, right? Southern Dallas. Southern Dallas County. South Dallas is where Fair Park is located.
South Dallas is a neighborhood.
It's a neighborhood, and it's a very fine neighborhood.
Yes, exactly. Southern Dallas references the area.
Correct.
Overall, but South Dallas is not Oak Cliff.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And the people in South Dallas, they're very proud of South Dallas.
Absolutely.
And it is not
Sunny
Oak Cliff. Sunny South Dallas,
yeah.
Right? And then Oak Cliff is Oak Cliff. You know, Oak Cliff, that's my hood, right? That's so they're distinctly different neighborhoods. And so the offense that is taken is that you've just lumped it all together because you just said it's all. If it's not North Dallas or Frisco or whatever, it's just South Dallas, right? And so let that be a lesson. I just want to, we always we try to educate, entertain, and encourage on the Herron Talks podcast. So we'll start off by giving a little bit of education. So don't get caught up in that situation. So understand what is Oak Cliff, right? And so our special guest today is the one and only April Allen. And if you've been watching the news, you've heard April's name because it's so tied to this deck park, right? And all of you, we all love Clyde Warren Park. Clyde Warren has been around now, how long? What, 15?
A little over 10 years.
A little over 10 years, okay.
10-year anniversity, I think about a year or two ago.
Okay, wow. And it feels like only yesterday, right? And now, Clyde Warren, even I think I saw, was it the New York Times? Somebody was ranking all of these public parks, these public spaces, top 25 in the country.
Yeah,
Clyde Warren
was in that top.
Was in the top 25.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, it's great, love it, right? I thought maybe it was going to be too small a place or maybe too new a place to rank, but they put it there and properly so when they gave all the reasons why, its proximity to the arts district and just the food trucks and just the excitement around it and what it means as a green space in a place that really needed it. It was really cool.
It's like the Central Park of Dallas, obviously a lot smaller than Central Park, but it's become like the central gathering place for Dallas.
Correct. So serves the same purpose, right? Yeah, just not as large, right? And so the cool thing about it and what April does, and April, so by the way, so I've already kind of just jumped into you. See, I'm excited about our guest today. So April Allen, who is we're going to find out about this soon. We got to talk about her background, is actually a Toronto native, right? So is Drake, is that where Drake is from too?
Of course. Hello, the 6. I mean.
Okay. All right. So I would imagine in the Kendrick Lamar and Drake situation, are we a little more
I'm
partial?
Not taking side. I'm not taking sides. I'm
Okay.
not taking sides.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. That's a very political answer, April. April has moved into that. Very good. That was you said, hey, look, I know how to handle that. Even something as it appears to be rather innocuous, not a big deal. But yeah, that Kendrick and Drake thing can get kind of
that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's from Toronto, right? Yeah. And she studied engineering in school. Went to Harvard. Got her grad school, Harvard, and has done a whole bunch of other stuff. Most of it is outside of engineering, right? And which is cool. I like when somebody explores the different fields, different things that you feel like you can contribute to and that you would enjoy doing. And I think that's a lesson that could be learned for a lot of people. A lot of us will go to school, learn X, feel like, okay, I'm tied to this. I got to do this. Even if I hate this job, this is what I got to do. And you no limitations on you. You're like, hey, look, this seems interesting to me. Let me get into that. And I think that kind of mindset allows somebody like you to become the president and CEO of
the park.
Yes, the park. And give me the exact title because I mess it up all the time.
No
so
problem.
April, so introduce yourself to us.
Sure. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you for having me. And I love talking about the project. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Sure.
Particularly with your audience, because I do think people need to know about what we're doing.
Without a doubt.
And but my name's April Allen. I'm the president and CEO of the Southern Gateway Public Green Foundation. We're the private partner in building Southern Gateway Park, soon to be renamed Halperin Park.
Okay.
A generous donation from a family foundation to do that. But we are the private partner with the City of Dallas. So it's a public-private partnership. So technically the park will fall under the City of Dallas's Parks and Recreation Department, but managed, operated, constructed, all of that by my foundation. So that's the project that's the work that I do together with my team.
Very good. Yeah. Now, so before we even get into that, I'm curious about your foundation. How do we
come to be?
Yes, how does that come to be?
Yeah, it's actually a great story because I love that our park was very much driven by neighbors.
Okay.
So I think, in Dallas, a lot of times these kind of like big shiny bauble ideas and projects, it's someone from the outside your neighborhood kind of zooming in and saying, hey, we think you guys would love this like great idea we have for your neighborhood. And that didn't happen in this case. In this case, what happened was TxDOT was going to be doing all that work on 35.
Okay.
Between 30 and 20. And they started doing community meetings to kind of, let folks know about that and get feedback. And at those community meetings, and Senator West was leading several of those, that's where neighbors from both sides of the freeway were like, well, hey, TxDOT, while you're out here doing this freeway work, could we get an amenity kind of like what y'all did, downtown, between uptown and downtown? And so really those neighbors got the ball rolling, shopped the idea around to neighborhood associations and elected officials at the time. And all of that culminated with a pledge for support in 2017, the City of Dallas's 2017 bond campaign, which gave some funding towards the bridge going over the freeway.
Okay.
And that was a match for a much larger gift from the North Central Texas Council of Governments that really funded this idea and really birthed the idea. And so to do all of that, again, it's a public-private partnership. The foundation was formed by some of those neighbors and some of the stakeholders in the area that were sort of bought into the idea of this park. So, and then I joined the board of that foundation many years later, 2017, so 2020, 2019, so it really wasn't that long. And then, so I joined the board. I was, I live in the neighborhood and was, of course, following the progress and had been at some of those community meetings. Right. And in 2020 is when TxDOT was finishing up with the project and getting started on actually building the cap over the freeway.
Okay.
And the board needed someone to kind of drive the train. And so I stepped into that role. So, so I've been doing it since, a little over 4 years. It's been fantastic. I mean, it's so funny. Like back in 2020, it seemed like forever,
right?
In terms of thinking about when the park would open. And now here we are 1 year out. So, but to back up, I guess, just for folks who don't know, we are building a park over 35 right adjacent to the Dallas Zoo. So think of Clyde Warren, which was built over, Woodall Rogers.
Correct.
Our project is going to be built over I-35. When it's complete, it'll be a little bit larger than the current footprint of Clyde Warren. So it's a 5.5 acre park. But we are building it in 2 phases. So what's out there right now is a little over half of the park.
Okay.
So if you drive up and down 35 and you're passing the giraffe, you're going under what feels like a big tunnel. That's the park. And we're going up on that bridge right now.
Right.
And so you can see all of the activity with a plan to be open by next spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
With a plan to be open by next spring.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do we appear to be on?
Yeah. In fact, they're moving very quickly.
Okay.
I mean, I was just out there yesterday, the day before, and they're about, between 35 and 40% complete.
Okay.
You're starting to see the structures come up. And so we're really now starting to kind of look towards how we operate the park. We've been in kind of development and construction mode. And now we're looking towards, planning to operate and open the park for our community and our neighbors. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. And so somebody who's listening to this and they say, well, look, I've experienced Clyde Warren. I like Clyde Warren. Mm-hmm. Clyde Warren, they will say, doesn't feel very far away from where this is.
Right.
Why do
this
we?
park?
Yes. Why this?
Well,
and what's different?
What's different? Mm-hmm. So a couple things. I think, there has obviously been a recognition of the difference between kind of North Dallas and Southern Dallas, right?
Correct.
And that North-South divide that's been written about. I mean, folks at the Dallas Morning News won Pulitzer Prizes about writing about that divide.
Right.
And it didn't happen by accident. The investment that we have seen in all parts north mm-hmm. has obviously resulted in a flourishing North Texas,
Absolutely.
Really. But, Southern Dallas has not seen that same level of investment, as you know. Mm-hmm. And, I always talk about when I first moved to Dallas, I was 28, coming from grad school. I was assigned a realtor to help me house hunt. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for a neighborhood that was near downtown. I was going to be working, downtown. Didn't want to have to get on the freeway. I had lived in Atlanta, didn't want to deal with all that traffic. And I loved the idea of kind of historic homes. So I read about Winnetka Heights mm-hmm. in a D Magazine article online. I was mm-hmm. in Boston. So I talked to the realtor and I said, this is a neighborhood I want to focus on. She was like, oh, Oak Cliff. Oh, no, you don't want to live there. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, well, it's not really legal for me to say this, but it's just not the right demographic for you. We'll get you a condo in Uptown. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not what I want. So I got a new realtor, and of course I ended up buying my house in that neighborhood, and I've been there ever since. But I think, that perception of our neighborhood has persisted. But for those of us who live there and know it, we know that it's like a place to be proud of. And it's actually one of the most, I think, interesting parts of Dallas because of the mix of people, both culturally, socioeconomically. It's a beautiful part of Dallas. I mean, Oak Cliff has topography and tree cover and, once you cross the Trinity, it's basically like flat all the way to Oklahoma, you know? And so I just think it's a beautiful part of Dallas, and there was a commitment to make this investment for a few reasons. So that's why we call the park a park with a purpose, because it's not just about the green space, which is important because we are in an area where there's limited access to green space within walking distance for folks. But it's also about how we use this $200 million plus investment to catalyze economic development in a part of the city that hasn't experienced that in the same way. And then also to really kind of reunite the neighborhood and think about how the park can help to lift up and improve the lives of the people that live around it. So when that freeway was built back in the 60s, they made decisions about where freeways would go all across the country. And many times the freeways aligned with redlining maps. And I'm sure your audience maybe knows what redlining is. But
you can certainly expound on
this
that.
was policy about dividing communities, really, and designating some neighborhoods as undesirable. And many times those quote-unquote undesirable neighborhoods were the African American and Latino neighborhoods. And so in Dallas, you can look at a map of the core of downtown and see how the freeways were used to sort of keep people separated and divided.
Absolutely.
And then you couple that with all the sort of inequitable policies that came later around education and transportation and, all the infrastructure deserts that we know about in terms of food deserts and everything else. It's not a surprise that, people experience life differently than other parts of the city. And in fact, some of the folks that live in the zip codes around the park have a life expectancy that's 20 years behind people who live like 2 miles north.
Right.
So, the goal with this investment was, yes, we want a place for people to come and, be able to, recreate with their families and, just have a place for folks to get out and enjoy and be out in nature. We saw the importance of that during the pandemic, people really needed places to go. And it's also a place where I think you can get to know folks that maybe aren't in your everyday circle and bubble. But also what we've really seen around the country, you were talking about earlier, we were talking about Clyde Warren being on a list of like top 25 public spaces across the country, is that these public spaces really end up driving development.
Without a doubt.
And so I was just talking to some folks who've kind of coined the term park-oriented development. We have transit-oriented development, but and we see that locally. I mean, Clyde Warren, I think they cite between $4 and $6 billion of economic impact as a result of Clyde Warren. And of course, we all know who were here at the time. I mean, it was like parking lots and bank drive-through tellers around it, know, and now it's like some of the most expensive real estate in the city. So, of course, our context is different. It's not, the middle of downtown. We don't have the Crescent down the street. But I do think we have an opportunity to, like you said earlier, create a destination. Well, that's what we're doing, is creating a new destination, a new live, work, play district, with the zoo, with the park, with what we're already seeing happen. We've counted almost $200 million of investment just since the parks, in the last few years around the project. So I think, and our planners had estimated about $1 billion of economic impact from the park. So anyway, long story short, I think the goal was not just about having another amenity for folks, which is also very important.
Sure.
Particularly for folks who are on the south side of the city. We shouldn't have to always drive all points north to get to something. But it's also about how we catalyze economic development in an area that is needs it. And actually, honestly, it's not even just that it needs it, but that it's a huge opportunity for our city. So, we talk a lot about all these folks moving here from all over the country. DFW is like burgeoning in terms of growth, but it's DFW. It's not necessarily the city of Dallas.
Correct.
And a lot of that's going to those northern suburbs and even southern suburbs. But city of Dallas has kind of been flatlining in terms of growth. And so the only untapped opportunity in Dallas is Southern Dallas, and we are excited to be kind of at the center of a lot of that excitement right now.
And so, and I think that's
was
great.
a lot.
No, that was great, and that gave proper context. And and there's a big part of that too that we have a pretty diverse audience, right? We're talking to a bunch of different people, and always we'll come across someone who's like, whether it's a DEI conversation or something like that, and people don't, the further away we get from being knowledgeable about stuff, the less we read, and the less we read, and the more we just kind of listen versus study.
Not knowing the history.
There are a lot of people who don't even know that. They don't know about redlining. They don't know about the disruptions to these kind of communities. They don't know that a lot of this stuff was sanctioned. It was done purposely, right? It was policy, right? Right.
Yeah, government.
Correct.
Policy.
And so when they're not knowledgeable about those things, they are very confused about why
we would make an investment like this.
Right.
Yeah.
And why was growth stunted in
Right.
that area?
Right.
And so then it becomes more of a blame game, or maybe it's the people there. Maybe it's they just don't want
Which
this.
came first?
Right, exactly, right? And so what they don't really focus on, just like you were talking about, that community, there's so many there lawyers and doctors
Absolutely.
and teachers and all those people who live in
Yes.
those areas. A lot of them came there because that's where they could go.
Right.
Right. But as they started to have kids and those, that
People
became
kind of started moving further out.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And so the situation is there is a kind of a disconnect about the reality of Oak Cliff in particular, right? You'll get a lot of people who think it's just kind of this impoverished group, and it's not. There's nothing that we can really make happen there, and there's nothing further from the truth, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of that money that goes and helps to build out North Dallas and Frisco and all that stuff, a lot of those are consumer dollars that leave Oak Cliff because the stuff is not there.
Right. Exactly.
Go to North Park go this weekend to North Park and randomly ask people, where are you from? You're going to find so many people from Oak Cliff at the Gucci store. Or listen, there is money there. And I think for a lot of investors and business people who are looking for places to invest and kind of build out their businesses, they have not seen Oak Cliff as the destination that they should see it as, because they think, well, there's no exchange of money here. Well, no, it's because there was not enough there to be able to see it, for you to see that.
Right.
But if you go look, I remember.
And that's a part of the issue is people don't go look. They're
Correct.
not proximate. They just assume, and then they keep doing what they've been doing,
It's the same South Dallas Oak Cliff thing.
Right.
Right. So, on the news, you hear somebody talking, well, in South Dallas. Well, that was in Oak Cliff. You're talking about, right? So there's we'll just say, right? We won't learn, or we won't try to take time to kind of understand the differences and things like that. So I say all that to say, when you have a project like this, it opens up the opportunity for those who understand it.
Yeah.
There's some very great business opportunities for people to say, hey, look, we've got this great thing that will introduce some people or reintroduce some people to this part of the Metroplex.
100%.
And they'll be like, this is a great area.
Yes.
So why don't I open this coffee shop? Why don't I open this, that, whatever?
Right.
And why don't I start building properties here? Why don't I start?
And it's happening. And that's
is happening.
And so, I mean, I think there's still lots of opportunity. But like just yesterday, I was touring an old ice house off of Clarendon and Ewing, so just down the street from the park. Proxy Properties is the group that's taking that ice house and kind of come up with a, it's a mixed use development basically. And he was saying, like, I mean, they've had so much demand and so many people reach out, and it's just word of mouth so far. They haven't even really been marketing it.
Right.
And I said, there's that much demand for a space like this? And he was like, yeah, so I think, and it's actually, it butts up to the creek. So they're going to have a whole like restaurant with a deck with outdoor seating all overlooking the creek over there. I mean, it's going to be beautiful.
Right.
And so I think you overlook this area to your detriment.
Absolutely.
If business and opportunity is something you're looking to do, it's a missed opportunity if you don't explore and go and learn more.
Without a doubt. I've noticed too, obviously being in real estate, so we see it, but as we see people moving back into
Dallas
and
Oak
Cliff in particular,
yeah.
And those values start to rise. Right now, it's still a great, even though the prices have risen dramatically.
Yeah.
It was so undervalued for so long.
Right.
There were great purchase opportunities there in Oak Cliff. And so as people start to move in, particularly those who are not Texans,
right,
or not Dallas sites,
100%, and don't have that preconceived notion about it.
Absolutely,
100%,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the stigmatization and the social norms that may not be the same for somebody from the Northeast or from the West Coast.
Like me.
Yeah.
Same.
When you came, right.
Yeah.
Well, and we see it all the time.
Yeah.
And so you'll get somebody coming in and they're like, okay, so why am I missing? Why is my agent not showing? This is big old area right here, and I don't see anything here. And then when they show up, they're like, this is the most beautiful part of the city.
Right.
Why are you not showing me this? And they kind of become almost like pioneers, almost, right? All of a sudden, they say, okay, cool, I'm moving over here.
Yeah.
And then their friends come visit, and they're like, this is nice.
Right.
And then now they start
planting. Totally. I think that's happening even in neighborhoods like Cedar Crest.
Oh, without doubt. Cedar Crest is
an area I've talked to a couple of folks who are, they were teachers. They came here for TFA. They stayed on. They're still working in the school system. And you can get, a semi-decent, affordable, like actually those were all custom homes back in the day,
Absolutely.
right? And you can get something, well, I don't know now, but it was like $300,000-$400,000, and that's hard to come by within a mile of downtown Dallas.
Without a doubt.
And that's 2 miles of downtown Dallas.
That's the other thing, too. It's proximity to downtown Dallas. It's right there, right?
Exactly. And we know, the younger folks are looking for that proximity.
Right.
They don't want to have to be doing these commutes and whatnot. So anyway.
Absolutely. And again, that is the crowd that is kind of making this happen.
Right.
It's a younger group and diverse group, and they're moving into that area and becoming real contributors to it, right?
100%,
as they come in, they are kind of making demands. Like, why don't we have we need a grocery store here, right? I don't need to have to drive over here. We're here.
Right.
And I think that kind of push from folks who are now, they're tied in. They've got an investment in this area. They push a little harder than somebody who's simply leasing, right? The person who's leasing, I'm here for a little bit, but I have not made a long-term commitment.
Right.
The person who's bought something over there, hey,
has
look,
ownership.
Hey, y'all need to. I need to see the police around here a little bit more. I need to have this happen, and they demand it. And so that Gateway Park is really a gateway into a whole better situation economically, socially, and everything for that area. And
transformative.
It's very transformative. And it's something that is, as you said earlier, is necessary for the city of Dallas proper, right? Because Dallas proper has just kind of flatline. There's Frisco blowing up and all these other places.
All these suburbs.
Absolutely. And you need the core to be strong.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like that hub and spoke, approach. And we don't, you need the core to be that the hub to be strong, so that the satellites can also be strong.
Absolutely.
And of course they have their own strengths. And I think all these areas have things that, that fit are they're different target markets for different parts of the city, obviously, right? But I do think that, someone who wants proximity to arts and culture and restaurants and, I like, for instance, I am just not a suburban person.
Right.
It's not my stilo. So I think we have something for everyone in the DFW area, but I really do think that Dallas has an opportunity to just not cede all of that growth to our suburban neighbors.
Absolutely.
Because we have beautiful spaces that, like you said, people coming from other parts of the city don't have the same, hesitations.
Correct. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that younger demo that may have been raised here, they don't have necessarily the same sensibilities as their parents, right? But a lot of that growth is being fueled by those people from the outside who are coming in, and they're like, "Hey, this area is beautiful." Or
I also think, and I had this conversation with, may she rest in peace, former Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, that was also those folks like your son who just graduated college, and maybe they wouldn't have thought about coming back to Dallas after going to college elsewhere, because they just it just wasn't on their radar. And now we have this kind of like vibrancy, you know, I mean, it's like a vibe.
Right,
You know,
right. Without doubt. No doubt,
It's
no
like,
doubt.
like vibes happening in that part of the city. And I think it gives folks like a reason to really consider, you know, coming back and planting their flag here.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
And I think that is very
you don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to, you know.
right.
Yeah.
And like you said, the aspects of Dallas has a world-class arts district.
Right.
You can't, I mean,
Right. No.
wherever you go, right? And so
It's number one. They were saying yesterday, it's ranked as the number one sports city. you
right,
know?
right.
I mean,
all of that stuff is here,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we we have to be able to make sure that those who get the story about DFW get more than the old school stereotypes
Yeah.
and myths
Mm-hmm.
about certain areas, because that for the longest has kind of kept that area down. Now, there's been, not just saying the myths and stereotypes and all that stuff, there's been, talking about Gateway Park, we've had a bit of gatekeeping, too, that has happened, that has caused, that or deterred people from saying, hey, look, I got to go through too much trying to make something happen. I got to make sure this person's taken care of. I got to do this. And so we had some foolishness there that has also harmed
For sure.
that growth. But for the most part, it's really the story of Oak Cliff and that southern sector, which has not been properly told. And I think when you have something like this project and all the cool things associated with it, because I'm gonna ask you to talk about that too, because there's some things that I'm sure Clyde Warren, because I think there's some additions. Clyde Warren has got some more money to do some stuff.
Yes, they're building.
But I think it also has to do with you all have some really cool stuff set up for this park, and
Thank
so
you. Yeah.
and I think everybody wants to. I don't want to fall behind that. But, so kind of tell us some of those differentiators, some of those really cool things.
Yeah,
that you got
and
going.
so and I do think, well, that's true that we do have some cool things, and we heard loud and clear from our community. So we spent about a year with community outreach, getting feedback and input from folks and neighbors on the design of the park, as well as kind of going back to what I was saying about how do we be very intentional about how it can benefit people who live around it. So we developed this equitable development plan, and it's got 5 pillars and or maybe 6. And so we have a lot of very specific things we're working on to ensure that the park reflects the community that surrounds it.
Okay.
But one of the things we heard loud and clear is we don't want another Clyde Warren Park. So actually, there was an initial design for the park that was done by the same design team as Clyde Warren.
Okay.
And that's back in 2017 when they were kind of trying to sell the idea.
Gotcha.
And they just needed to kind of help folks kind of wrap their brain around what it could be.
Sure.
But then our board, which is made up of community members mostly, so, we really want a community-informed design. We don't want just another Clyde Warren. And so we actually hired a whole new design team, many of whom were from Oak Cliff, raised their families in Oak Cliff. One of them is a 5th generation Oak Cliffian, and
Is that what it's Oak Cliffian?
Oak Cliffian.
Okay.
I made that up. I don't know if that's a real thing. But it's funny, actually, our lead architect at the time, who's no longer at the firm, HKS, but he was born and raised in Glen Oaks, and his family had been there for generations. And then, of course, white flight changed things, but his family was one of the few that decided to stay.
We're gonna hang.
Yeah, and so anyway, just an interesting story there. So just people who really could understand the ethos of Oak Cliff and were very thoughtful about how we reflected in the park. So to answer your question, first of all, it's a multi-level park. So I talked about Oak Cliff is a place where we have interesting topography, and you can drive around the streets of Oak Cliff, and you're going up and down cliffs.
That's right.
Right, and there are actual kind of neat rock formations and things like that you'll see. It's an escarpment.
Right.
So the design team noticed that there is an elevation change from one end of the park to the other. So it goes from Marsalis to Ewing over 35, right beside the zoo.
Okay.
And so they incorporated what they call an interstitial space in the middle. So basically there's a 20-foot difference between the second phase and the first phase.
Okay.
And in the middle, they're connected by what will be our food and beverage building. It's an air-conditioned space where we'll have food and beverage and maybe some seating and meeting space. And so that building also has a rooftop deck with beautiful views to downtown. So I love that we have, it's not just a flat park.
Sure.
It's going to have like varying elevations. And then there's a ramp that goes up the park to that high point where the rooftop deck is. So we've got multiple spaces for people to be in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful children's area, which is massive. Going out there, it takes up the entire side of the park, like one whole side of the park. And it's got a tree house in the woods kind of inspiration. And again, thinking about like the creeks and streams around Oak Cliff and all the tree cover. So, and all of our play structures in the children's area are going to be nature-based play. So there'll be all wood-based structures. So just kind of a differentiator from what we see elsewhere. Yeah. Wood plays a large element in the design, so the building has like timber elements on it. We'll have a stage pavilion where we can have concerts, and that also has a lot of timber accents and elements. A large open lawn, of course, and that lawn actually has the capability to be turned into a ice rink. As well. So we can maybe do some fun things with our partners at the zoo over the holidays, things like that. There's an outdoor amphitheater. We thought about it as an outdoor classroom space where we could do, maybe animal demonstrations with the zoo. Kids could come after school. There's a truck drive, for food trucks. But then we also thought like health and wellness is one of the pillars of our equitable development plan. And we said, we want to have things like yoga classes and all that. But what if we could host a mobile mammogram clinic, at the park? Or so kind of being thoughtful about like how we extend it into the community that surrounds it. So, and then there's actually a main thoroughfare, kind of the pedestrian main walkway that goes through the park called the 12th Street Promenade. We're planning to turn that into kind of a history walk where we again, sort of acknowledge the people and organizations that have contributed to Oak Cliff's history. We've been working with our Community Advisory Council on that. So there are also several water features throughout the park. One that's actually a neat rain curtain that comes down from a high point into the children's area.
Okay.
And then two kind of other fountain areas. Nothing like, the Clyde Warren big Vegas style.
Yeah, not Bellagio situation, right?
But still plenty of opportunity for kids to have fun. And so, it's going to be a very actively programmed park. So this is not just think of all the things that are happening at Clyde Warren on a daily basis. We will be working to, have the same level of activity at the park. I think being beside the zoo presents a great opportunity for us.
No doubt.
They've already got 1 million plus people coming in there every day, and this is just another opportunity for them to kind of stay and play. And so, we can be a place for sure the neighborhood, but also all of those the regional visitors that are coming in for the destination and it being a real destination. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I hope check out our website, southerngatewaypark.org, so you can kind of see everything I'm talking about in terms of what it'll look like.
southerngatewaypark.org
yes.
is the site. And so, we'll make sure that we even have it listed on the on the podcast there too. It's a very exciting project. And I really do believe there's going to be a lot of other projects that will spring up from this and will really help to kind of solidify the kind of the rebirth of that area, because I think it'll even bring interest into Oak Cliff. Has some of the nicest two parks in particular. I like the park that's right there on Colorado.
Lake Cliff.
Lake Cliff.
Yeah, and Keys.
Yeah, right.
Gorgeous.
Lake Cliff, Keys. Also the what's the one? The one that has the Japanese garden.
Oh, Kid Springs.
Kid Springs. Yeah.
I mean, there's gorgeous parks.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think,
not to mention, Stevens Park Golf Course if you're a golfer.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like those gorgeous views of downtown. It's one of the best golf courses in the city. Public golf courses.
Absolutely.
In the city.
I think it'll bring attention to all those places too.
Yeah.
I think people will like, hey, I'm going to spend the time.
Yeah.
It'll go beyond just go to Bishop Arts, right?
No,
that's everybody thinks Bishop Arts is that's Oak Cliff is Bishop Arts, right? And Bishop Arts is a very important piece of Oak Cliff. Very great piece. And
lots of great momentum happening there. But I think, this is about helping folks see what else Oak Cliff has to offer.
Absolutely.
I mean, Wynwood, there's some awesome things happening at Wynwood. And it's funny because, the housing stock in Oak Cliff actually mirrors North Dallas. Like,
without a doubt. When you think about that community that most people don't even know exists right there behind Wynwood Shopping Center.
Right.
It's one of the nicest neighborhoods in all of Dallas, but people don't know it's there.
Right. And those homes basically look like the homes in Bobo Link, or similarly Glen Oaks.
Sure.
I mean, all those kind of custom homes are the same homes that are in a lot of those neighborhoods up, in Lakewood, North Dallas that folks just don't know about. So I just think it's and you get a lot of nice lot sizes too.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Nice size lots. The that neighborhood was developed by, what is the gentleman's name?
Which one?
The Wynwood neighborhood.
Yeah. Angus Wynn.
Angus, thank you. Angus Wynn. And Angus Wynn is also the developer of Six Flags.
Six Flags,
I always thought that was an interesting fun fact, right? But it's
Wynwood. I mean, there's a rebirth at Wynwood. They've got a Target going in there soon.
Sure.
All kinds of great things happening over there. So I think again, it's a great. And another neighborhood I love in Oak Cliff is Keastwood, like that whole area around Kimball.
Absolutely,
it's just beautiful.
Absolutely.
And there's all these really pretty mid-century homes over there if you're into mid-century. So I think it's definitely worth exploring if folks haven't.
They should. And here's what happens on that. So people do start to rediscover it. And then they get in there, and then they add a little extra touches to it, and the value goes up so high. And so by the time people who grew up there want to try to move back, they've been priced out, right?
Hard. And that's something we're really concerned about as it relates to the park and the area surrounding it. I mean, I do, people ask us, like, is this going to gentrify people out of the neighborhood? And, obviously that's not our goal, and we don't have a ton of control over it. But, my hope is that people who own homes actually benefit from that appreciation, and that's how you drive generational wealth.
Listen,
many
April,
times. Yes,
you're speaking my language. Now, I've gotten into heated conversations about this before with people because everybody wants to call everything gentrification. Hey, you're gonna price everybody. Listen, the people who came into that community, who had to suffer through a lack of value with their properties being depressed values in that community, who stayed there, who solidified the neighborhood, who made sure that even as this white flight was happening and people were dogging the neighborhoods, they stayed. I want those people to finally be able to receive what the real value is of their homes. And so, listen, move away from me with all that talking about, hey, you're going to price everybody out. Whatever. I want these people to win. The people who invested and stayed there, let them win.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think, the challenge is the property taxes go
up.
Yeah. And so, we're hoping, we're trying to work on that from the policy side, like with our elected officials, looking for ways that we can help mitigate that property tax burden for folks. Particularly with the new session coming up, we've been working with some state legislators on that.
Right.
And then, looking at some other ways that we might do that on the private side. But a lot of times what we actually learned, so we had a gentleman come out to one of our community meetings last year over in the bottom, and it was right around property tax protest time. And he talked about the fact that so few people protest their taxes in Southern Dallas. Right. He said, I mean, I don't know if these are real statistics, but he said 90% of people in North Dallas protest, 9% of people in Southern Dallas protest. And a lot of that is awareness, time, how do you even go about this? And so he was providing some of that service for free. I'm sure a lot of those people don't get those letters from the protest companies because the values aren't high enough for them to make it worth their time. So I think there's also just some education we can do. People a lot of times don't have those homestead exemptions. There's a program for seniors where you can defer all the taxes until the property is sold. Okay, and so it basically caps the taxes that you pay until it's sold. And so, for a senior, that's not coming out of your pocket today. Right. And really if let's say you pass away,
that's right.
It just it goes to the heirs, and that so I think there's education also. A lot of times there's title issues, cloudy titles. People know, you live in grandma's house and you never really transferred the title over, so then you can't get the homestead exemption, things like that. So I think that we have some work to do on that front as well. But ultimately, like I said, I think most generational wealth in the United States comes from home ownership.
Absolutely.
And so we can help people build that, hopefully with this investment.
Absolutely. The Monument Realty obviously is we've become a really big real estate operation. A lot of it is in Frisco and North Dallas and places like that. But one of our goals is to make sure that we are a benefit and resource for even areas where they've been traditionally kind of underserved. And so Oak Cliff and there's parts of East Dallas, you've gone to Pleasant Grove and places like that have traditionally just kind of been overlooked.
Yeah.
And I think through proper education and being a resource, letting people know, hey, this is what you need to know.
Yeah.
We can help that situation, and that's a big push of ours.
Great, that's
moving
awesome.
Forward. So,
that's awesome.
I'm just excited about projects like this. I'm excited about what's happening at Redbird Mall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those areas there. So Oak Cliff, again, that people are going to look up and realize, dang, I should have been, instead of moving to a suburb of Oklahoma City, because that's basically what you're doing. The further north you get, you may as well drive to Choctaw Casino, because you're already up there,
I
right?
I know.
So I just think that a lot of people who are going to start to come back in
100%. I just think, I live in North Oak Cliff. That's the area I moved into when I moved to Dallas. And then my husband, who was born and raised in Glen Oaks.
Sure.
And, there's just nothing, the proximity to everything is amazing. And the alternate routes that you can take to
Absolutely.
is amazing. And I really don't have to go outside of, Northwest Highway. As my upper loop, if I unless I really want to get.
And Northwest Highway is your upper,
yeah. That's my upper bound.
It's something about North. I'm telling you, Dawn, North Park Mall is kind of
the upper bound.
Yeah, but because that has to be in it, right?
Yeah.
That you have to still be able to get to North Park, right?
And, 635, but I think that. I hope that your agents will look for the opportunities in and around the park and in Oak Cliff, the larger, wider Oak Cliff, because it is particularly for folks who feel like they're priced out of Dallas and parts of Dallas have gotten expensive. I think you still can find some great first-time home buyer options in and around the areas that I'm talking about, and you just have to be looking for it.
Absolutely. There's so many opportunities to purchase something that may need a little work, a little updating, but the moment you make that investment in it and update it, you've got something pretty significant on your hands. And so those kind of opportunities present themselves in Oak Cliff all the time.
And I do think the amenities are coming.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I know it's been a slog there, just like the food deserts and all that kind of stuff.
It's hard. It's funny. I was talking to someone this week and they're like, for some folks, they're like, oh, this happened overnight. It's kind of fast. But it hasn't been, and it has not been easy.
Right.
And I have had to hustle to find support for this park because, we're not proximate. The sort of like folks in Dallas who can support projects like ours, a lot of them are already, tethered to other projects. There's so many good things happening in Dallas. I don't belabor that. But a lot of these people literally never drive our way. So they have no idea what we're doing. And, my board is not a bunch of brand name fundraising types. It's mostly neighbors, which is where the park's origins come from. So it's been difficult and challenging, but I'm thrilled that we're where we are. Folks can see the progress. You can also check that on our website. We have a kind of tracker that shows you like the latest construction photos. And it's real. It's happening. When I started, people were like, is that a real thing? I'm like, no, it's really happening. And I'm excited about it.
And as far as the phases, so this is the first phase. This is the
first phase.
And the second phase, when does that anticipate?
So good question. So actually, we were really excited to we received a big grant from the Department of Transportation last year in 2024. So 2024 was a big year for us. We started construction. We got funding to name the park. We got funding from the Department of Transportation. Secretary Buttigieg actually came into town to announce that grant that also benefited several other parks, including Clyde Warren. But the funding will help to build the bridge for the second phase of the park.
Gotcha.
And so TxDOT actually is already working on getting the engineering going for that.
Okay.
Once they build the second phase, we go from being a bridge to a tunnel over the interstate.
Okay.
And so that's when, like right now, you won't see any of those big fans and things like that underneath the bridge.
Right.
But once we add the second phase, we will. And so that's also a big part of the expense is adding in all of that fire suppression system, just in the unlikely event something happened under there.
Gotcha.
So, but they've already actually built in the sides so that they wouldn't have to come back and really spend as much time, and just close down traffic and all of that. So, a large part of it is already there.
Okay.
And so hopefully it wouldn't, be as much of a burden to build that second phase. But long story short, hoping to have that going sometime in the next couple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Oh,
and we'll be opening 2026, spring 2026. So it's next year.
Right.
I say it like it's so far off.
No,
it's
just right here.
I know, and I'm excited because it's actually right ahead of FIFA World Cup.
Right.
Summer. And again, think about the target market for
Absolutely.
football, soccer.
Absolutely.
In our area, it's amazing. So I think it's going to be an amazing place to be able to come and watch the World Cup and just take advantage of the opportunities and welcome all the international visitors that we'll have.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
I this is amazing thing. What you're doing is amazing. That work that you and the board and all of you guys are doing with that. I just wanted to make sure we had you on to talk about that because it's such a big deal. It's going to be such a driver for not just business, but just for better life outcomes, right? One of the stats you gave was still just amazing to me is that the life expectancy of the residents
Southwestern
there.
study.
Yeah. It's 20 years.
20 years behind. Yeah.
Behind, just 2 miles away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy, but all of that, there's there are a lot of forces that came into play to cause that to happen, and so anything that can be done to kind of improve life in general.
And I think a big part of our project too is, I say this a lot, is about telling people they matter.
Right.
If you I think about the kids who've grown up in Oak Cliff, you grew up in Oak Cliff, and you hear these messages about how your neighborhood is not desirable. Like, what does that tell you about yourself, and about where you're from and who you are? And I know people in Oak Cliff are Oak Cliff proud.
Yeah, the people who grew up there who really know.
They really know. They're like, whatever.
Right.
But still, I feel like those messages are detrimental. And so I think a big part of this push is also like we matter.
Absolutely.
We matter. We deserve the pretty things and the good things too.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we shouldn't have to go all points away from our neighborhood to get the things that people take for granted in those other neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
And then again, the business community has to understand. Listen, not only this is a great project, a lot of goodwill, there's money to be made.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, I wish I owned some land.
Right. Or had some new business concept to go there because I'm telling you, those people will win if they make that kind of investment. But they have to first be able to believe in the people. That's the part of the problem. They don't believe that the people that could support it, they don't believe. And their data is skewed because they're not getting the real deal. They don't really know the people that are there and the level of support.
I think they make assumptions.
No doubt about it.
So many assumptions, and they don't know that that the socioeconomic mix, the cultural mix, the spending capacity, all of those things. So
but they're going to learn.
Yeah,
They're going to learn. Well, April, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to come hang with us today. And like I said,
it's a privilege.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you. We said in 2025 on the Herron Talks podcast, we're going to be talking about things outside of just real estate. We really want to be impactful on the lives of those people who take the time to even listen to us and pay attention to us. So we want to, we want to bring you things that will help improve your life and kind of educate, entertain, and encourage and do all those kind of things. And so we want you to also, if you like this, subscribe, like, share. Again, I'm saying this at the very end. Comment. Yeah, do all those good things. Thank you, Marcella. And so we can get some traction on this thing, get other people paying attention to it.
And we are still raising money for the park. So.
Okay, very good. So
if you know anybody who, wants to name some things, we've got all kinds of things that can be named at the park, and elements and chairs, but also like larger things, buildings, and so we do definitely still need some support.
Okay.
So if you know anyone who has that interest,
yeah,
let
so
me know.
Get some naming rights there.
Yes,
put your
child's name on something.
I like that. Right. So very good, April. This has been wonderful. Y'all go check out what's the website again?
SouthernGatewayPark.org.
SouthernGatewayPark.org. Go check that out. And again, we will see you guys next time. April, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.